coming out of it to poison the McDonald's drive-thru around dinner time. None were around. The eastern clouds had started to give way to darker shades of blue with the setting day, the black of the storm coming off the mountains rushing to meet them. Underneath and in between lay the town roads, of a steely blue that hid the light and strained the eyes to look at, a shadowless, ambient dark that was like being deep underneath the ocean. I turned away from that smothering sight to face the diner again. This had all started out with me wanting to grab a bite, hadn't it? So, I'd figured it would be funny enough if I did just that. Come into good old Earl's and have myself a good old dinner like nothing was going on at all. I pushed open the door and walked inside. Much like the outside, the diner was all gloom, with only silence to fill all the empty space. My eyes darted from table to table, searching for a meal ready for the taking. I figured it would have been somewhat hard to find a waiter to order myself one. Tucked away into a corner, hidden partially behind a red booth, I saw what looked like some kind of a pie, glowing under the dim gray spotlight filtering through the windows. I approached, met halfway by the sweet smell of apple and cinnamon, the bitter and sharp notes of coffee piercing through the gentle aroma. I came to sit in the booth and found the most delicious-looking plate of apple pie just waiting there alongside a cup of hot black coffee, both seemingly as fresh as can be. I took one most flavorful bite out of the pie when I found myself in a memory. I was once again a child, maybe 11 or maybe 12, sitting in that same booth with my parents and sister one night. There was a winter cold that drifted in through the seams between the windows, with a soft whistling sound that was drowned by the ambient chatter and warmth of conversation. Glistening under an overhead lamp was that same apple pie, with the wonderful scent of cinnamon that wafted off of it. My parents were bickering over some triviality as my sister was drinking a milkshake, without a care in the world, her nose lost in the whipped cream. A most ordinary sight of a family meal, I suppose. All the diner was mirth and glow with the anticipation of Christmas. Assorted decorations already lining the counters and walls with cheery phrases and imagery. I was looking around, taking in all the warmth and laughter in the air when my eyes set upon a young man a few booths away. His face was down on the table, turned away and off into the night, seeming to be sleeping as the others in the booth were entertained by what looked like a mighty joyful conversation. They took an interest in their friend some moments later, posing for selfies and drawing shapes on his forehead as he lay, unmoving in his slumber, oblivious like some comedic relief comic character. Yet there was darkness on his face, cast in from the night outside like a ray of light. All around him, his friends were laughing and having a good time, yet he lay there, still like a stone. He seemed to be apart, cold and unmoving like the winter outside, untouched by the warmth of the diner. All his friends seemed oblivious, laughing and patting him on the shoulder, trading jokes and silly looks as he lay as a shadow. I realized then that he was dead. No one seemed to notice, thinking, all.
RACQ is a different kind of insurer. One owned by Queenslanders, for Queenslanders.
To notice, thinking, all, that he was asleep. No one had noticed him die. I turned around, too fast, shaken by that sudden realization, looking to see if anyone else was seeing it. No one was. Everyone was huddled in their booths, laughing and gulping down tasty food, none the wiser as that man lay dead. I looked around some more when another sight caught my eye. A cat was perched on a windowsill in a far-off corner of the diner, looking off outside into the freshly fallen snow, glowing dimly with moonlight. It, too, seemed unnoticed in its presence, dark like the night and still, blending into the background, hidden by the conversations and decorations. No one tried to pet him as he lay quietly, looking off outside with soft, lonely eyes. At the opposite end of the diner, right outside a window, was a magpie, double with its reflection upon the glass. It was staring into the building, the soft orange light of the inside shining in its eyes as it shivered softly in the cold. It seemed to consider its own reflection, still for a moment, half clad in the cold dark and half warmed with orange. It took off the next, flying through the glow of a street lamp before disappearing into the desolate winter. All around, there were moments of solitude and cold, hiding in plain sight, noticed by no one. all the cold and darkness in the world, woven throughout, as the light seemed to not even care. I remembered breaking from my reverie at the sound of shouting to my right. The young man's friends were shaking him by the shoulders, trying to wake him to no avail. The dead man shook with the shoves of his friends, his eyes serenely shut, a calmness on his face. The diner had gone dark by the time I was shaken out of that memory by the sound of tapping, coming from somewhere in the streets. There was a hollow bang to it that I followed out onto the sidewalk. A single lamppost was glowing some 50 yards away, leading towards Town Square, glowing softly through the rain. The sound grew louder, echoing in the narrow streets. A hard thud and then a ringing like that of a bell. I was turning the corner onto Town Square when I
Have
saw
you
it.
figured
First
that
a
yet,
pair of
human?
boots and then a pair of pants
You're
that
in
swayed
the
above my head.
apocalypse.
The boots were hitting the lamppost with rhythmic
Is that
thuds,
easy?
the ringing following after. Thud done, thud done. A man was hung from the street light, swaying
You
in the
woke
wind,
up in the
casting a
apocalypse.
swinging shadow in the orange glow. Behind him, lining the square, was the rest of the townsfolk. Hundreds of them, hung from trees and street lights, hung down from balcony railings, swinging under the rain. They all cast dancing shadows upon the orange glow of the square, swaying and swaying, some twisting with the ropes around their necks. All was silence but the rain and that rhythmic thud. All was rain as I collapsed to the ground. I could see that man swaying above me, covering the light like an eclipse as darkness filled my vision. The muffled sound of joyful music was playing gently in my head as I slowly came to my senses. I felt hints of dancing colors through my closed eyelids as an ocean breeze blew across my face, waking me with a stinging cold. The music grew clearer as I woke up. They were all gone, blown away like leaves in the wind. I was sitting at the edge of a tall cliff, thinking of how it had all gone down as the sun rose in the eastern sky, shimmering on the still ocean. Maybe I should tell their story from the beginning. I woke to the sound of soft rain tapping on my window, letting through the gray shade of a day overcast. Stretching lazily, I reached for my phone, as one does, first thing in the morning. 11:17 a.m. That sure was odd. My parents were early risers and usually had no qualms about waking me up to have a family breakfast at some ungodly hour of the morning. I rolled out of bed and wiped some of the sleep out of my eyes to get a look about myself and my childhood bedroom. It's always a strange feeling to come back home. Coming back to find it different, to wonder if it was you who had changed. Walking along the streets that used to just be streets, and seeing them as memories instead. The tall cliff by the lighthouse my school bus used to drive by, the lonely beach west of town where a whale had once washed ashore, the suburbs that stretched away into the pine forests at the mountain's reach, my dingy old room, gloomy places that reminded me of simpler times. Home was a calming reprieve from the hustle of life. Putting on some clothes, I made my way down the stairs and into the living room, calling out into the kitchen. I heard no reply but the static of the rain. I then made my way in and found it spotless. No dishes in the sink, no crumbs on the counter, nothing. Going back through the living room and out onto the backyard, I found it empty but for the tire swing gently swaying in the wind, the branch crackling rhythmically as the tire swung back and forth, back and forth. The tire swayed as I called first my mom, then my dad, finding their phones
Your mum and
ringing
dad
in their
was
bedroom.
not there. You're in the
That was
apocalypse.
admittedly quite weird, but I was too lazy
You
to be
woke up
worried
in the
that morning.
apocalypse.
So instead, I scrounged up some breakfast and went back up to my room to play the new Zelda game. I occasionally looked out my window and onto the street. It too seemed deserted. No cars passed by as the rain fell lightly on the tarmac.
Like I said,
No lights were on and no dogs were barking. It wasn't before well into the afternoon that I took a break. My parents were still nowhere to be found, so I figured I would order myself a pizza. Domino's wasn't picking up and neither was that local pierogi place. Meanwhile, the Chinese restaurant's number didn't even ring. Frustrated,
Apocalypse.
I decided that I would resort to extreme measures and try to cook something myself. By cooking, I mean instant ramen, so I started filling up a kettle as any self-respecting college student does. But it wouldn't turn on.
yeah, apocalypse.
I grabbed some Pop-Tarts to warm up in the microwave, yet that wouldn't turn on either. I then reached for the light switch, but to no avail. Apparently the power had just gone out. I looked out the kitchen window and out onto the street to see all other houses had remained equally in darkness when something else caught my eye.
Apocalypse.
A nightingale, perched on a power line some 10 yards away, was staring back through the kitchen window and into me, it seemed.
This human
It stood
is
there,
dumb.
unmoving for a few moments as the gentle rain shone on its fluffy coat, its tiny
If I
eyes
was him,
carrying
I
an
would
expression
realise
much
I
too
woke
human
up in the
somehow
apocalypse.
that I could not place.
No one
Then
around,
there came the
plus
sound of a chirping from the
TV,
forest that the old suburbs
phone,
had woven their way into. With attention in its tiny
doesn't
body, the
work,
bird
the
sprung into
oven
the air
doesn't
and
work,
disappeared amidst the pines, lost
everything is
between their
dark,
shadows.
no
I couldn't
power,
help but feel a sudden
so
cold
I
in my
will
stomach at the
realise
sight of the forest
right down there,
and the deep darkness
apocalypse.
that rose between the trees. However, looking away, I quickly got back on the topic at hand and considered my options, pushing away the uncomfortable feeling.
Humans.
I'd been cooped up inside the entire day, so I thought I would head into town
I
and
used
grab
to
a
be a
bite in there.
human.
I
Rocky
gave a
short,
call to
but
one of
I
my high
don't.
school friends,
I don't
Rob, to
miss
see
my
if he would come
human
along.
part.
It's odd how people can stay the best of friends despite years apart.
I
How a
love
man
being
can
a
spend
god.
30 years in suits, then go right back to being 17
god
at his
like
high school
being.
reunion. I hadn't seen Rob except for summers and spring break in the 4 years
Yeah,
since our
no,
graduation,
he's
yet we could
gone.
hang out just like we always had. Except this time, he hadn't picked up.
Told you.
Whatever, I
Apocalypse.
would just stop by his house on my way. Wallet, phone, keys, check. I got on my bike, put on a raincoat, and made my way out the door.
Man.
The garage door closed behind me and the house fell back into silence. The tire kept swinging at the edge of the forest, back and forth as something moved between the trees. The streets really were empty. There wasn't a sound from any house as I made my way over to Rob's.
Apocalypse.
Not even a TV was turned on in a living room. Not a single car was backing out of a driveway. Off in the distance, a light mist seemed to be rolling down from the mountains that stretched away into the horizon, gray and hidden by the clouds. It was working its way through the pine trees that hid the night under their dark canopies. I'd gone there camping with my father once when I must have been around 14. The age where you're too old to play games with your parents, and be a child yet too young to have a real conversation with them. Bored, I'd gone off wandering into the tree lane, away from the clearing where my father was setting up the campsite and along a calm creek. I've always had a good sense of direction, and being 14, I thought that basically made me Bear Grylls.
No
So I'd gone
human.
away much farther than I should have, far outside of shouting distance, and would surely have been lost if it wasn't for the creek. I'd been walking for maybe 15 minutes when I came across a fork in the clear stream and something caught my eye. A raven. A curious thing, perched on a low-hanging branch. Its head was cocked to the side, standing.
What is it? Let's go to bed, you know. Go upstairs. Go all the way up. Here we are. Guess I will see you in the morning. Well, another day. Let's fucking push play, guys.
As still as can be, facing my way. I couldn't tell in the oily black of its eyes where its gaze fell exactly. It tilted its head further to the side as I approached, wrapped in an ambient blue that reflected off the water. I'd never pet a raven before, had I? I was going to give it a shot. Moving from rock to rock, I approached carefully, the sound of my footsteps carried away by the gentle flow of the water. I was maybe within 5 meters that the raven calmly lifted off the branch and landed on another, further along the creek, still facing my eager self. There, the soft light reached down from the clouds and cast a shine upon its tiny eyes. There was a sharpness unlike any animal, staring calmly in my direction, unblinking and beckoning me to come. So I did. Stepping across the creek fork, from smooth river stone onto earth and moss, I got within its reach, transfixed. Once again, the raven retreated further along the creek, deeper into the forest.